help women save lives and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. And she just came out. She told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. So we had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello and welcome to the 40 Days for Life podcast. I'm Sean Carney, your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. And we are just a week away from the largest spring 40 Days for Life campaign ever. Go to 40daysforlife.com if you are watching or listening to this podcast the day that it comes out. Happy St. Valentine's Day, and I hope you are having a wonderful Valentine's. So today we are going to cover something that's not Valentine's Day themed, but something that we predicted would happen, something that has been happening for years, and something that just recently happened again in the context of CVS and Walgreens now becoming the largest abortion chains in the country by dispensing the dangerous RU46 abortion pills. And that something was the poor Canadian teen who died from an RU486 abortion. We will let you know what happened to her. We will cover some of the other deaths, something the abortion industry is not talking about. Everybody's saying that women are dying in the streets because Roe was overturned, but they're not saying anything, which is not true, by the way. They're not saying anything about women dying from chemical abortions, and yet these things continue to get deregularized by the minute. So that is the topic of today. We will cover what a medication abortion is, what it's not. It can be confusing. We will break it down for you on this podcast. And joining me today, somebody who is definitely ready for Valentine's Day, is Mr. Steve Carlin, who joins us from Madison, Wisconsin. Steve, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Sean. Happy Valentine's Day. And more importantly, tomorrow, pitchers and catchers report. So baseball is going to be back.
Wow, you are quite the romantic. I hope that you're not saying that to Laura. I know it's Valentine's and I know you wanted flowers and you wanted chocolates, but instead I'm considering buying season tickets. I was aware of that, by the way. Very exciting. Basically, we're all deciding who's going to lose to the Astros in the playoffs and in the World Series because they are loaded once again. As you know, they lost one of the greatest pitchers of the modern era, if not the greatest, which is Justin Verlander. You think he was the greatest of the modern era last 20 years?
It would be hard to argue otherwise, I think. I mean, he's got I got to be careful here to keep this about 40 Days for Life and not go into a baseball preview podcast. But
even though you're surrounded by baseball stuff in your 40 Days for Life podcast studio, I got to avoid baseball.
He's been amazing for 2 straight decades. So he's won a World Series. He's won Cy Young awards. He's kind of done it all for a very long period of time. So yeah, I think he's got a very strong case.
But he left, Steve, as we all knew he would leave. And this is my point, and then we'll move on. This is how good the Astros are. He left, and we were all like, we don't really need him anyways.
Yeah.
Which is true. It's not like we're mad at him. We knew he would leave, but we're like that good where we're like, we basically have 3 starters who we have to use as relief pitchers because, so the Astros are loaded. They had a good offseason and glad to hear. In case you were out there and you didn't realize pitchers and catchers were reporting this week, baseball was here. Great American pastimes.
If you didn't have a Valentine, you can have one in the pitchers and the catchers.
Steve, I'm going to do a little existential analysis.
Ooh.
Okay. We are recording. This isn't quite the Matrix, but we're recording this podcast the week before Valentine's Day. Okay. Because I'm going to Krakow, Poland, where we're having our first 40 Days for Life leader training in Poland. We've typically had this in London, and we moved it to Germany last year, and the Poles really wanted us. They love 40 Days for Life. So it's very cheap to do a conference in Poland in February. So I'm going for like 3 nights. It's going to be crazy. We're going to go to Auschwitz. I'll report on that. And we're training our wonderful African leaders and European leaders. So the crucial like 5-6 days leading up to Valentine's Day, I won't be in the country. But something is going to happen when I get back, and I realized it today. So I went out and I bought Mary Lisa's Valentine's Day gift like a few days ago. So I'm way ahead. Probably not going to be wrapped. There has to be some compromise, but I feel confident about the gift. So I got that. I was worried I wouldn't, and I'd like land in Poland and realize I'm going to get back, and it's going to be, I get back the night before Valentine's Day. Okay. And of course I'll be out of it because of the time and all that. So I didn't want to put all this pressure on myself on actual Valentine's Day to like be the loser, like the guy at Christmas Eve who's running around the mall. That wasn't going to happen to me on Valentine's Day. So I bought the gift way ahead. But then I realized I can't buy flowers 10 days before Valentine's Day, a week before Valentine's Day. So I'm going to be the loser, and I forgot chocolates. I'm going to be the loser that's at the grocery store buying flowers like on Valentine's Day, totally jet lagged, not knowing what month it is. And people are going to think, Steve, that I'm like the last minute guy. But really, I bought the gift 10 days ago. I just wasn't able to get flowers. And I'm worried about the perception of that.
I think when you buy your Valentine's Day flowers late, you need to not be gloomy like the Pharisees and the hypocrites. You need to just anoint your head and wash your face and go get those flowers, and don't let the right hand know what the left hand is doing, and just own it. Just be okay with it.
And when the clerk looks at me like, you're buying flowers at like 4 p.m. on Valentine's Day, you're a total loser. Should I try to shamefully defend myself and be like, you don't get it? I had to leave the country. I actually bought my wife's gift a week ago, but you couldn't buy flowers a week ago, or now we're into the weeds, and just rolling their eyes at me.
I think you're just you can make a case that you're a good steward of your time, because there's a lot of options. And by the time you're getting the flowers in the card, there's not going to be a lot of options left. You're just going to take what's there. And it's really, going to allow you to devote more time to your wife, which is probably what she really wants anyway.
That's perfect. She really wants flowers. She said, don't get me anything for Valentine's Day. I just want flowers and chocolates.
Okay.
So I don't have the 2 things that she asked for, and I have like 2 other things that she didn't ask for, but I think she'll really like. So, okay, that's very good. That's a good point. Time management. That's how we're gonna use this. And I literally book the flight around because and I have 5 daughters. I think everyone says Valentine's not a big deal, and I know it's gotten so secular, but it's a beautiful message. It's a great EWTN video on St. Valentine if you want it for your kids. It's a cartoon. It's awesome. He's illegally marrying couples. He's martyred. It's awesome. So, but the cheesy stuff, I know that's out of control. But I know my wife well enough and my daughters well enough that if I were actually traveling, like if I were flying in on Valentine's Day or I was gone Valentine's Day, they would say it's not a big deal like a month before or 6 months before, but then they'd be like, oh, Dad's not here. And so we have to leave the hotel like 3:00 in the morning. Anyways, so
you're paying a price. No one can say that you're not giving your all. You're getting up super early. You're going to be jet lagged anyway. I think you get kudos from everybody, including the store clerk. And certainly it's a lot more functional than what's going on in my house, which is my son is upset that I'm spending Valentine's Day with my wife because he thinks we're running out of time to go to Buffalo Wild Wings before Lent happens.
You didn't name him, but if that is Peter, then Peter's stock in my mind is like just skyrocketing since we started this video podcast. And even though he said he didn't want to look like a tool if he were ever made a bishop. But that sounds pathetic, but that's like high school male 101. Lent is coming. We must go to Buffalo Wild Wings. Yeah, but I'm taking your mom out for Valentine's Day, and our whole family is built on the health of our marriage. Forget all that crap. We got to go to Buffalo Wild Wings. We're, like, the clock's ticking. We got a week till Ash Wednesday. So that's gold. What you and Laura should do is go to Buffalo Wild Wings for Valentine's Day.
Oh, man.
Really.
There's nothing more romantic than the 5-alarm extreme wings that may result in a hospital visit.
The cheese curds aren't actually bad there. They're not like as good as where you are in Wisconsin, but they can hold their own. That's pretty much the only place we can get cheese curds in Texas.
Okay.
There's a few places that try it, but
yeah, there's a lot of stuff that is sold and marketed as cheese curds that we know better, and you know better, which is great. I'm happy for you. I've learned barbecue from you, and you've learned fried cheese from me.
That's a more accurate statement has never been said. So yeah, that's very true. And thank you for affirming me. And thank the listeners, and sorry to the listeners for me sort of having to explain my Valentine's Day situation and sort of justify it in my own head. But really excited about Poland. Of course, by the time this airs, I'm back, and we will be talking about that. But what a great pro-life country, and they are holding down the fort in Europe. So we'll be getting back with everybody. 20 countries will be represented at that symposium. So should be really, really awesome. I have leaders all throughout Africa and Europe. So be really, really great. And today we're going to cover something that is not great. And this is just part of the new problems and challenges we're having in a post-Roe America. The future of abortion has been for a long time chemical abortions, RU46, and we're going to obviously highlight and share this abortion pill that killed this Canadian young woman. So, Steve, I want to start this out by, we have been at 40 Days for Life campaigns where we're pretty sure the woman died, and we can't prove it. This has happened. This doesn't happen a lot, but this has happened a couple of times where you see a body covered in a sheet come out of an abortion facility and go into an ambulance. Technically, it could have been the lady that works at the front. She had a heart attack or something. But dying from an abortion, a surgical abortion, happens. Okay, it doesn't happen a lot. We're not here saying this is like a major cause of death. It's not. But the chemical abortion pills are very dangerous, and the complications go through the roof. We've covered that on the podcast. In 2006, Steve, I was the director of the Coalition for Life, a local pro-life group that ended up, we had already birthed 40 Days for Life 2 years earlier. I was serving as the director. David and I were going back and forth. Are we going to launch 40 Days for Life nationally? Of course, that didn't happen until 2007. But in 2006, I put together a commercial attacking our local Planned Parenthood abortion facility. And in that commercial, we had permission. We used the picture of Holly Patterson. Holly Patterson was the first woman, I believe she's the first woman to ever die from RU46. And she died in 2003, because this 20 years ago was the first death. And she was in San Francisco, and her parents didn't even know she was pregnant. The whole thing was horrible. So she dies. She's 19, 20 years old. She dies. And we used her photo in this commercial. It's like a litany of things of why Planned Parenthood is bad. And they were starting to get into RU46. That is the first lawsuit of many that Planned Parenthood ever threatened me with or filed. And I was like 22 years old, 23 years old. We put together this ad. Running TV ads in Bryan, College Station, Texas is dirt cheap. You know, I mean, for like $10,000, you can just cover the airwaves on ESPN, everything. We even ran a Super Bowl ad, Steve. We had a donor give us money for a Super Bowl ad. Planned Parenthood goes ballistic over the Holly Patterson thing. I mean, ballistic. You're saying we killed her, all that stuff, which we didn't say. We pointed out that she died from RU46. And they send me this lawsuit, and I'm like wide-eyed. I mean, oh, it's like FedEx. The paper is like unbelievable. It's like, how much does this cost per sheet? It's gorgeous. The law firm is from New York. It's very impressive. It's like a booklet of why I'm going to go to prison for the rest of my life. You have violated this. And they sent it to me, and they sent it to all the TV stations that were airing this commercial. And I have a point to all this. Abby Johnson was the director at the time, and she goes ballistic because they're suing us, which she's fine with, but they're suing the TV stations who Abby's like trying to build a relationship with. So they go over their own director's head. Planned Parenthood has their law firm in New York. They FedEx all these letters, and the TV stations start calling me. They're thankfully all but one were mad at Planned Parenthood, not at us, because we got legal clearance for the ad. And I'm sitting there and I have this like kind of fear come over me as I read all their accusations and why I'm going to go to prison and they're going to sue me and we're all finished. And then I like look up and I'm like, we hit a nerve. Like that, our Holly Patterson dying from RU486 bothered Planned Parenthood more that we were exposing it. I don't think they care about Holly one bit, but that we were exposing that because this garbage that abortion is safe and nothing threatens that assumption that abortion is safe more than RU486. And we ended up buying more ads. I had a lawyer and he said, they're not going to send you all this if they're actually going to sue you. You're good. They're not going to go to court and argue whether they killed this woman. They're not going to go to court and argue whether they're racist or not, because that was in the ad too. So it was a great early lesson for me back in 2006 that what just happened to this poor Canadian girl, this bothers Planned Parenthood like nothing else. You can say a lot about Planned Parenthood, but when you start showing pictures of the dead women that they've killed, they don't like that at all. And this is what we're going to be doing in the next coming months and years, because what happened to that girl in Canada, it's not the exception. This has been a trend every year that you have these RU486 deaths, and it is more private than a surgical abortion. No one drives you. You go in, now you go through the freaking drive-through at Walgreens and you go home and your parents get a call that you're dead in your bathroom. And that's why pro-lifers need to know this bothers Planned Parenthood like nothing else, yet they are expanding it on a level no one would have ever been able to foresee.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And it's not just going to be Planned Parenthood who is spooked by this going forward. Planned Parenthood, they don't like when this stuff is exposed, but it's their whole business. So they're kind of prepared for it. This gets back to something we've been saying on the podcast for the last few weeks, which is CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, any other pharmacies or pharmaceutical chains that decide they want to get in bed with the abortion industry. They're going to have to not just deal with this in an uncomfortable fashion, but they're going to have to deal with it putting the rest of their operation in jeopardy. They're selling greeting cards and they're selling real medications and they're selling, every pharmacy is sort of like a mini convenience store, right? This mini overpriced convenience store. This is a whole operation here. And I just think it's going to be a really fascinating thing to see. Tragic, but I think it's going to be fascinating to see how do they deal with this when the abortion pill that they sold is the one that kills a woman. And it's not Planned Parenthood, big bad Planned Parenthood, who even makes a lot of abortion supporters uncomfortable because they don't like the idea of trafficking body parts harvested from aborted babies. But when you've got the ad up that you're talking about on the Super Bowl and it's the Walgreens on the corner in your town, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I don't think they're prepared for that, and I don't think they're even considering it.
They're not. And Abby Johnson has said it. Ramona has said it. Certainly Sue Thayer said it. All these former Planned Parenthood directors said there became this like wave, and it goes on now. It goes on inside Planned Parenthoods where you'll get the most pro-abortion Planned Parenthood worker kind of raising some questions when a woman demands RU46 abortion. I mean, a lot of them know this isn't the nice. It sounds nice. I mean, to the consumer, to the woman, she thinks, I take a pill. The next day, I take another pill, and that's it. It sounds easy, but it's not, and that's why some of the current workers are like, I don't think you want to do this. They actually put that in Unplanned in the movie. Abby talks this girl out of doing an RU46 abortion, and I remember Abby telling me later that was kind of the first time she thought, I don't know if I'm as convinced of this as I once was. I mean, now I'm talking people out of an RU46 abortion, which I'm supposed to be selling because of my personal painful experience with RU46. And so a little bit of background on this. By the way, I want to make one other point about CVS and Walgreens. One of the differences, and we have this track record of women going to Planned Parenthood and then taking RU46 and dying. It's a little different for CVS and Walgreens because they're publicly traded. So when some 8-year-old goes and eats a bean burrito at a Taco Bell in Seattle and keels over, whether Taco Bell's innocent or not, they probably are innocent. It's all over the news, and it's just bad. It's bad. You ate this, you ate whatever. You ate Taco Bell, you died. You got this virus at Six Flags. Whatever it is, it's bad. And it's really bad when you're publicly traded. I agree with you. CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid. Rite Aid's going bankrupt. I think they would sell anything if they could to try to save that company. But all of these pharmacies are unprepared for what even Planned Parenthood isn't very well prepared for, as I illustrated. I mean, the Coalition for Life, I think our database was like 4,000 people. I mean, we're this small rinky-dink pro-life group in the middle of nowhere, Texas, in their mind, in College Station, Texas. And they're like spending hours paying $800 an hour attorneys to write us these letters because we put a photo of Holly Patterson on a TV. That's why I'm not showing like, oh yeah, we're great. We got them to get scared. I'm highlighting it because they actually were bothered and scared on a level. This is like using the bazooka to kill the ant, us being the ant. And we hit a nerve. And now it's going across the country to these other groups. Okay, a little bit of a background. The news came out that this 19-year-old Canadian woman died from RU46. People say, well, what's the cause of death? The cause of death is septic shock. That's it. A
known complication of the abortion pill. So you'll see kind of they've got their adverse reaction report in Canada. You can find it online. I've reviewed it. And they're always quick to note, like, well, we don't know for sure that this is exactly what killed her, but you've got to otherwise healthy 19-year-old, prime of life, springtime of life, and then dies after taking the abortion pill of a complication of the abortion pill. I don't know. You tell me, Sean.
Yeah, and the thing we're not saying, which should be said, even though it doesn't really have to be said, is the RU46 pill does kill the baby. That's a guarantee. That's a guarantee unless you do abortion pill reversal, which we're going to talk about in a moment. But it's to kill the baby. But the whole notion that it's this safe, easy, you're in your room, you take a nap, you wake up and you're no longer pregnant is a bunch of nonsense. And it's not the first time that this has happened. So the U.S. approved RU46 in 2000. Canada waited 15 years, Steve. So it was only legal.
Oh, why is that?
Yeah. So the reason that Canada delayed it is because a woman died of septic shock during a clinical trial in Canada in 2001.
Mercy. Yeah, that'll be a reason to delay it hitting market. I don't know if talking about hitting market is accurate given the communist health system that Canada has, but It was approved in 2015, didn't actually get distributed until 2017 because this isn't the first time it happened. Same exact thing happened during the clinical trial. I wish it was that Canada had found some sort of pro-life conscience, but no, they went for it. They waited, they approved it, and now they've approved it. And now there's more blood on their hands. As you said, Sean, the babies, and now a second Canadian woman. We also know it here in the U.S., the FDA tracks this. Dozens of women have died. You mentioned Holly being perhaps the first, but she tragically was not the last. There have been dozens more since then. And it boggles the mind because we saw pro-life media run with this story because obviously we want to share the harms of these abortion pills and the dangers and the risks of them. And the mainstream media, as usual, just pretty much swept it under the rug. They weren't interested in talking about it. You'll probably label it a conspiracy theory or something to that effect. But the report speaks for itself.
So what I've heard the media say, which you can take this however you want. It's insensitive. It's certainly not pro-woman. Is yeah, but it just doesn't happen that much, Steve. I mean, the Canadian woman died. We're sorry. We're sorry about Holly Patterson. But I mean, when you look at how many abortions there are, not that many women die. So that's a problem, obviously. But how many medications can you take that will kill you? I mean, how many common medications? Because RU46 is common. So how many common medications kills a woman? I don't know that. I'm not claiming the answer, but I don't know. I mean, if you go in for, whatever, you're on blood pressure medication, you're on even some heavy medication that's not like a painkiller that people get addicted to and then die. That's totally different, or OD on. But RU46, like, what else is CVS and Walgreens dispensing that can send you into septic shock and kill you? And that delayed, approval of the FDA. I'm sure there's a lot of drugs out there. We're going to have Dr. Ernie Sear, who's a pharmacist and a great 40 Days for Life campaign leader. He was the leader of the year in 2016. He wrote a great article on this for Day 41 magazine that'll come out in March. But I just think that the big checkbox that everybody's saying, praise God that we're here and we can just give access, abortion access to all these women through RU46. It's a big assumption. And what we're going to do, we got to get into this because, Steve, people think that Plan B is RU46 and it's not. So why don't you take us through what is a medication abortion? Like, what are we talking about?
Sure. And medication abortion, Sean, we use that term, of course, with a grain of salt because medication is meant to heal or ensure or restore the proper functioning of the human body. That's not at all what an abortion pill does. An abortion pill deliberately breaks an otherwise healthy functioning woman's reproductive system. So the abortion pills, RU486, medication, whatever you want to call them, chemical abortions, we call them often. It's a series of pills, two different types of pills. The first is called mifepristone, and what that does is it essentially thins out the lining of a woman's uterus, which makes it impossible to sustain pregnancy. And then the second pill is called misoprostol. I struggle with the pronunciation of that sometimes, but that one induces contractions to expel the now dead or dying baby from the woman's womb. So these pills are taken in conjunction. Each of them have legitimate uses, but they're most well known for ending the life of an unborn child. So that's what this is.
Here's some side effects. Yeah. So side effect number one, it's painful. And this is illustrated and unplanned.
These are not complications. These are side effects. This is this is not like the rare case.
Side effects: vomiting, fever, nausea, chills, diarrhea, headache. Those are the side effects. According to the Mayo Clinic, women might need painkillers to manage pain after a chemical abortion, and they might not be able to go about their usual daily routine after a chemical abortion. I think most people think you can. I think this is how you get sold on, I don't want to have surgery. I don't want a surgical abortion. I don't want to look the doctor in the eye. I don't want to go up to the clinic. I just want to go through the drive-through at CVS. One abortion pill testimony says, "I was amply prepared for the bleeding, but not for the pain." Another woman said, "I spent a few hours in enough pain to be incoherent," which is in Unplanned. If you haven't watched our announcement that we would have 40 Days for Life campaigns outside of CVS and Walgreens, go back on the YouTube page, you pull it up, and watch that video, because we show that clip from Unplanned of Abby's chemical abortion. And if you don't want to watch that again, obviously don't watch it, but it's a great clip to share with people of what this is. When that movie came out, what did not happen? What did not happen? Planned Parenthood did not have a press conference with medical professionals and abortion doctors to point out the obvious 5 medical inaccuracies of Unplanned the movie. That never happened. They criticized it, propaganda, all the vague, headlines, or labels, but they never said that's not what happens in an abortion. That's inaccurate. We're suing you. Never happened. And there's a lot of incentive for them to do that. Tons of incentive, but they couldn't. So,
when you do see the fact checks on this topic, it's kind of fascinating. Really look into it, because I was doing some of my homework for this episode and for some other work we're doing on the abortion pill, and I kind of found the debunking of the pro-life claims on the abortion pill. And so I just kind of described that mechanism, that the lining of a woman's uterus is thinned. That makes it impossible to provide nutrients to the baby that's developing. And so essentially, it's fair enough. We say that the abortion pill starves the developing baby of nutrients. So, Sean, I found the fact check on this, and I was waiting to find out why that was incorrect. And the response from the abortion industry was that, well, the abortion pill does prevent the fetus from receiving nutrients. The word starve is a loaded word, and the word kill is a loaded word. And of course, now we get into this thing where you say things like starve or that the abortion pill kills baby, and now we're making people unsafe just through our rhetoric. So you're going to kind of hear people try to debunk it, but they're not going to do so in a very credible way.
Yeah, I mean, are they going to say that on the experiments that were done on Jews during the Holocaust? I mean, that starve and pain, those are loaded words. It's what you have to do for dehumanization. If you say anything accurate, it's a loaded word. Why?
Mhm.
Because otherwise you'd be starving another human being so that they would die. Yeah, that's the main reason. Yeah. So that's why it's a loaded word. By
It's
the
like
way,
planned nutritional deficiencies. That sounds nice.
Right.
And
right, much better. It's like a diet, except they don't want it and they don't have enough to sustain life and they die. Otherwise, basic diet. You're going through all this, Steve, and this is a small thing that's happening, but I hope and pray that it will become more like more mainstream as RU46 gets out there and gets more normalized. What you described, Steve, is just on a basic level, just so unnatural for the woman's body, right?
Yeah.
You're pregnant, which is totally natural. The baby is growing, totally natural, and you're having to intercept that. And there is this, we talked about it on the contraception podcast. There's this secular, nothing to do with religion or pro-life or any of that, but there's just this secular, naturalist, organic movement within medicine. And we definitely see it with the vaccine. Some of the most anti-vaccine people are the naturalists. They don't take any vaccines. They don't take an Advil. They're just like, you're all crazy. But we see that. And when you describe this, Steve, I mean, holy moly. I mean, it's just, you're having to just intercept using drugs this natural occurrence that is going on with the woman's body. And they don't think there's going to be a lot of complications. I mean, no wonder these side effects are all through the roof. No wonder there's great pain. You're having to stop something that's natural,
And that's a really important point, Sean, because you were talking about just sort of some of those testimonies about the woman who was in so much pain she was incoherent. Well, flash back to your remark about Planned Parenthood saying, well, most of the women that nobody's talking about all the women who don't die of abortion pills. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about why Planned Parenthood's numbers are fake in a little bit, but I think it's worth noting these stories about the women who are incoherent due to pain and who are prepared for the blood loss, but they weren't prepared for the pain. These are not sort of the far end of the spectrum of possible outcomes. This is within the normal range of the typical user experience. Some women, it might be more, some women, it might be less, but you hear about a woman who is just incapacitated by pain after taking the abortion pills. That's not what they would call an extreme scenario. That is just, it might happen, and you hope it doesn't. You hope for the best. And it's the reason perhaps why of the women who have had multiple abortions, a lot of them whose first abortion is a chemical abortion decide not to go that route for their second one.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. The only other thing that's sort of mainstream that I can think of is anybody I know. I don't think that they should unless they're like preparing for surgery or something. But somebody who's like extremely overweight, right? They're like 400 pounds and they want to do bypass, or somebody tells them they're a candidate for bypass, whether it's a nutritionist or whatever, and they don't want to do the weight loss surgery. And we've all heard just nightmare stories about weight loss surgery, but a lot of people do it. But a lot of people don't do it because they go in and they're like, we're going to do this and we're going to slice this. And they start explaining everything and they're like, I don't know, man. I think I'm just going to diet. I'd rather lose it the natural way. And whether they do or don't after that, they reject the surgery. That's the only other thing when you go through all the RU46 stuff of so many women who hear about it or do it and are like, I shouldn't have done that. I would never do that again. That was not what I thought it was going to be. And it's the same with weight loss surgery. People think they're going to go in and they're going to come out looking like Brad Pitt. And then all of a sudden they have all these complications and it's a mess. It's a disaster. And that's what keeps a lot of people away from weight loss surgery. And I'm hoping in the same way, it'll continue to be the case for RU46, because when you describe it, it just doesn't sound great. It doesn't sound natural because it's not. And what's the difference, Steve? Because if I'm watching this or listening to us, I'm going, yeah, but guys, if you explain a surgical abortion, who in the world would do that? True.
Which is a good point.
They don't explain surgical abortions.
Yeah, ultimately, all of these things are designed. Real medicine is designed, as we said before, to heal the human body, to ensure its proper functioning, to restore the proper functioning. All of these things, abortion pills, surgical abortions, they're breaking an otherwise healthy body. And that's what is so dangerous about it. There's going to be complications about it. Yes, you may need to amputate a limb if that's going to help save the person's life. You may have to do it to prevent infection. There's all sorts of reasons why you may have to, as you've said before, Sean, to cut or to tear or to break. But ultimately, the goal is to restore the proper functioning of the human body. That's not what abortion does. Abortion is just ruining something. And you asked before, Sean, you said, how many other medications?
But real quick, it's glossed over, Steve, but by Planned Parenthood. But this is not. They have on their website, you take one pill and then you take the next pill and it's all great. But as they explain it, you're like, I don't know. That sounds really bad. With a surgical abortion, it's like, well, what's going to happen? An abortion is a common surgical procedure which ends a pregnancy. That's it. That's the explanation. Okay. So, but they'll explain this. It's hard. That's why we have 40 Days for Life, obviously. It's hard to deter a woman from a surgical abortion from the abortion industry's explanation of it. Their explanation of it sounds great. Their explanation of RU46 doesn't sound great.
That's why they try to market it as like a miscarriage. And I don't know. I can't understand that being a marketing point. Where else do you find someone saying, come get this new form of abortion? It's like having a miscarriage. It's absolutely insane. And you had, Sean, earlier asked, how many medications can you just die from just unexpectedly? And I don't know the number either. I imagine you could have an allergy. There's probably any number of reasons. But What I do know is I'm unaware of any other medication where we see just testimony after testimony after testimony of awful experiences with it. Okay, nobody who has to go through chemo enjoys it, but they're grateful at the end of the day that it saves their life if it does. Here's another testimony. One woman described her. Yeah. One woman was writing about her experience with the abortion pills, and she described it as the, quote, most painful experience I've ever had in my life. I literally said to my boyfriend, I just want to die, end quote. I don't know of a diabetes medication or of a pain drug or anything else where anyone has ever said something like that.
Well, and we're going to show a short clip of Unplanned. This is what Planned Parenthood did not refute when Unplanned came out. So that clip, and again, I referenced it before. You can go to our CVS Walgreens announcement on the YouTube page and watch the full clip. We do the whole thing, start to finish. But it's absolutely brutal, and that's the easiest way to explain it is the movie, because it's accurate. Okay, so that's what the abortion pills are. But Steve, what is medication abortion not?
Well, as we covered, it's not medication. That's a misnomer. It's not safe. We talked about the pain. We talked about just the common side effects, but there's also greater complications. According to Mayo Clinic, again, this isn't Lila Rose we're quoting here. It's not Life News or LifeSite News. According to
even though Lila's accurate.
That's true. That's true. But this is from a pro-abortion source. A woman who undergoes a pill-induced abortion needs, quote, access to emergency services. I don't know. I've never gone to pick up vitamins for my kids and read the fine print and found out that they better have access to emergency services. I've never gone for the Tylenol. I've never gone for, burn cream. This seems to be kind of a one-off, in my opinion. Why would you need it? And furthermore, if you can just go get it at Walgreens, or if they're shipping it through the mail now to a woman who's never seen a doctor, how does she perhaps even know to find emergency services or where to go for them? Or who to call? Dr. Haywood talks all the time, Dr. Haywood Robinson, about how any other situation in medicine, you've got complications and you just say, oh, go to the emergency room. That's called patient abandonment, and there are consequences. There's punishment. You might lose your license for it. Here with abortion, it's standard of care. And so I think it's good for us to be sharing this. The complications can include hemorrhage, infection, isoimmunization. What does that mean? That sounds frightening. That means that depending on your blood type, if you have an abortion and you're not under the care of a physician who's doing a full examination, it might endanger your ability to have any more children in the future, because you'd create antibodies against any future children that you conceive. Sounds pretty serious to me. And of course, death as a possible complication. Now, here's something, Sean, that I want to cover. Is the abortion...
That's interesting, Steve, because let's say not just the vitamins and the burn cream, as you mentioned, but other prescription drugs. And you read the fine print, and you're like, if you believed half of it, you wouldn't take anything, right? But I've never read fine print of anything or heard of it. I'm not on medication, but I've never heard of, like, you have to have access to an ER. I mean, that's pretty strong language. You don't have that for blood pressure medication or cholesterol medication, or, that's pretty heavy duty. And that's my point, is what other common, not rare drugs that somebody has some rare virus and they're treating it with this pill. They only make 5 of them in the world. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what is mainstream, commonly dispensed, prescription medication where it says on there, you must have access to an ER. Most of them say any complications or, call your doctor, whatever. But they don't say, be within 35 miles of an ER.
That's an interesting point, too, because what do we see as the rationale for this dramatic proliferation of the abortion pill? Everybody knows if you live in Los Angeles or New York, you're probably getting RU 486 for Valentine's Day, if that's what you believe in. They're saying we need to ensure access to women who don't have access, which in many cases is women who are in rural communities. They're maybe not right next to a big metropolitan area. And so now you're going to take women who might already have emergency health services, fewer and further between, and you're going to ship them this pill. They may or may not have seen a doctor. They may or may not know whether they've got an ectopic pregnancy. They may or may not know whether they've got the blood type that leads to the isoimmunization. There's a lot that they don't know when they're taking this pill. And now suddenly, I've taken, we've all taken medications, I suppose, at some point in our life. I've never read the fine print. And so I can imagine if you're getting this chemical abortion pill, what do we see when we're out at Planned Parenthood? We're seeing a lot of women who just want to get the experience over with, and they don't really want to think about it much more than that. Are they sitting down and taking the time to read the 4-point font, discussion of how the side effects could be death and make sure you've got a medical provider in an emergency situation close at hand? Probably not.
But Planned Parenthood knows what CVS and Walgreens don't, which is how dangerous these are. Because I would say Planned Parenthood, for the most part, some of them do. They don't gloss over this, and they cover that in Unplanned. We mentioned how Abby's like, you probably shouldn't do this. But I've heard current workers say that, RU46 is serious. They know how dangerous it is. They know the difference between the heart medication and RU46. CVS and Walgreens don't, and we're just going to see this play out. It's going to be bad, and we're going to have more of these complications. But I also think, and praise God, we're having 40 Days for Life outside of the pharmacies, and we'll do a big push for that in the fall also. We're not going away. But it shows how what we say is not this cliche, but this really is about hearts and minds. Because what removes this whole scenario? This poor girl in Canada dying, Holly Patterson, all the women that have died over the years in Canada, in the United States, figuring out how you can get a doctor to write a prescription to your local CVS so you can go drive through, go home, go through this horrific process. What annihilates all of this is getting rid of the desire to kill the baby. That's the foundation of the abortion movement, and the ultimate sickness of our culture is that we will the baby out of existence. Our desire to kill the baby is what's driving this. Okay. And I mean our as a society, and then of course, as individuals who say you should get an abortion, or I want an abortion, or making your girlfriend get an abortion, whatever it is. And most women going in for an abortion don't intellectually process what's exactly going to happen. I'm sure the culpability varies from woman to woman. But ultimately, there is this desire that we don't want children, and we don't want this child. And the only way to get rid of him or her is to kill him or her. And that is the ultimate sickness with what we're talking about. And that is, of course, what we can never lose in these conversations, because the parents of Holly Patterson, the parents of all these women who just all of a sudden are dead in their apartment and their parents didn't even know that they were pregnant. There's a lot there. There's a lot there. If she was pregnant, she didn't want the baby. Maybe she was embarrassed. She didn't tell us. We could have helped her. Whatever it is, that is why we have to go out to the sidewalks. That is why we have to go out to the sidewalks. So, okay. This last study, Steve, you mentioned the Mayo Clinic, but the abortion industry runs around and says all the complications are rare. they'll talk about the pain. They'll give them instructions. They may get wide eyes and be like, okay, well, it's not as easy as you think. But they say you're not going to have any real complications. However, a 17-year study, this wasn't just snagged like one crazy year, a 17-year study of 423,000 abortions confirmed 121,283 ER visits within 30 days of the abortion.
Whoa.
Yeah, that is shocking. And to be clear here, when I first read that, it sounded to me like we're looking at like, what, 1 in 4 women who takes the abortion pill?
25%.
And that may or may not be the case, right? Some women, and this doesn't make it any better, by the way. That's how many emergency room visits, not how many women went to the emergency room. So maybe there's a woman who's going, 2 or 3 or 4 times. I'm not sure, but that's how many visits are associated with it. Here's where this number just really blows out of the water Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry's talking point about like, yeah, well, some women die, but almost all of them don't. These are rare complications. The reason the complications that are reported are rare in Planned Parenthood's estimation is because Planned Parenthood is telling women who suffer complications from the abortion pill, when you go to the emergency room, don't tell them you're having an abortion. Tell them that you're having a miscarriage. And so that does a couple of different things. One is it provides some cover to Planned Parenthood and to the other abortion providers. But on top of that, it's also really bad for women. Doctors need the full information about why a woman is showing up at the abortion facility. Why a woman is showing up at the emergency room after having an abortion. And the study that you're referring to, Sean, also has good data that shows that when a woman misreports an abortion as a miscarriage, her health outcomes are worse. So none of this is in the interest of women's health, and certainly the way they are going about reporting and managing complications, also not in the interest of women's health. It's about keeping Planned Parenthood out of the headlines, making sure that you don't have any more material to run a Super Bowl ad with.
Yeah, because it's not in the interest of the woman, but man, it really gives comfort to the woman for Planned Parenthood to do that. Talk about manipulating people's emotions, because no woman wants to go into ER and say, hey, I'm in the middle of a chemical abortion. I'm having major complications, because they don't want to tell anybody that they're having an abortion. Yeah, they know that. So they say, don't say that. And there's kind of like this, okay, good. I don't have to tell them what's going on here. I just need to say, hey, I'm miscarrying. Well, what about all the drugs that are in your system? Planned Parenthood doesn't want you to tell the doctors that.
Yeah, what if they're going to interact with something else we prescribe? Anytime you get a medication, they're running the checks to make sure that this drug plays well with this drug. What happens then? They need to update their Shout Your Abortion t-shirts, Sean, and put a little like asterisk with a disclaimer, except for the ones that land you in the emergency room. Those ones are the ones they don't want to. What they're talking about, getting rid of stigma. Everybody should feel confident, comfortable talking about their abortion. It's a normal part of life. Normal women have abortions. Family women have abortions. That line goes right out the window the moment that we're talking about these injuries and deaths that result.
So true. Go to Kavanaugh's house, okay, and shout your abortion. Send a message to Alito and Amy Coney Barrett. How dare she claim she's a woman? She hates women. Shout your abortion at their houses. Shout your abortion at the Supreme Court. Shout the abortion, on the steps of the Capitol. Point your finger, roar, be angry. But if you have a complication from a chemical abortion and you go to the ER, whisper your abortion. In fact, don't even mention it. It's a total scam. And that's why there is just one side of this that actually cares about women, and the other side could care less. And this is the perfect example of that. Tell them you're miscarrying. But I'm not miscarrying. I came here and I got a chemical abortion and now I'm having complications. No, don't tell the doctors that when it all goes wrong. They don't need to know that. Do you think they're looking out for women? It's absolutely absurd. Okay. Moving on. We have a little section in here on contraception, and we have an entire podcast on contraception. But Steve, abortion, as we know, doesn't really prevent a woman from becoming a mother.
Right. Yeah. This is something where we just kind of need to expose that talking point, and we can do so fairly quickly. I think this is not a matter of, there's a lot of confusion, even amongst pro-lifers who are pretty dedicated. What is the morning after pill? What is the abortion pill? Now they've had in the last, 10 or 15 years or so, this pill called Ella, which is kind of like in between. It's like a week after pill, if you will. And the abortion industry really wants to blur that line, because we're not in favor of contraception, but the abortion industry knows that people are a lot more comfortable with contraception than they are with abortion. So if you can kind of it's a pill that prevents pregnancy or can end a pregnancy, you're just using these vague, generic terms. I think it's just important for us to be clear. This doesn't stop conception. The abortion pill is meant to end the human life after it begins. And there's no repeating that baby whose life is lost in that abortion. And that's something that can be a useful point to remind women of if they're considering it, whatever the abortion industry is saying. And we know too that the morning after pill, for example, can have an abortifacient nature, but it's not its primary design. So I think it's just worth being a little bit educated on what the abortion pill actually is and how it works, so that we can speak about it with those who might be considering it.
Yeah, and many contraceptives are abortifacients as well. We cover that in depth on our contraception podcast, but that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is, because contraception is so widely used by many Christians, many people think it's the greatest thing ever. We don't, but you can listen to the podcast and agree or disagree. But because that's so sort of accepted, I think it's sort of the most acceptable sin. Like contraception, divorce are just sort of like, everybody does it. Everybody's on it. We're all cool with it. And 100 years ago, it'd been like, what? Maybe even 50 years ago or 60 years ago. But because of that, Planned Parenthood has wisely used the public acceptance of contraception to market and introduce RU46. Now, as I mentioned before, if you go in and you're like, hey, I want RU46, I'm already on contraception, so it's not a big deal. Most likely you're going to get somebody to be like, this is different. They're going to be a little bit honest about it. But that's a smart tactic, Steve. And I think we're at a huge disadvantage of, it's like preventing a baby, getting rid of a baby is a pill. That's the contraceptive mentality. And of course, ultimately, contraception is just, the goal of it is sex without babies. So abortion's the ultimate contraceptive. That's like the last stand of, we're not having a baby. But that mentality is really used by them with RU46 of like, it's just pills. Oh, your contraception pills did work. Here's another set of pills. And most women just accept it, or, want a way out. There's no woman stomping around like saying, I want RU46. I think it's great. It's like a multivitamin. They're not doing that. They feel scared. They feel trapped. They don't want to have a surgical abortion. And it's like it's like wrapped up in a bow. This is the easiest. You will no longer be pregnant. Take these 2 pills. It'll all be over in 48 hours. And that's how they sell it. And yet it's so horrific for the baby, because the baby dies. And they see that when they pass the baby. We haven't even gotten into the psychological ramifications of it, but that's a huge problem. Shopping malls, movie theaters, prom. We've heard it all of where a woman actually passes the baby and she says the same thing. It was a tiny little baby. I didn't know that. So anyways, okay, Steve, as we close out, let's get into abortion pill reversal, which we have a lot of options for. We'll have those at the 40 Days for Life. We have them at the 40 Days for Life campaigns that are in front of Planned Parenthood referral centers. We'll definitely have information available at the CVS and Walgreens campaigns. But Steve, I know for me, I was in San Diego, the great Gene Valinsky, God rest his soul. I visited his campaign like in 2008 or something, 2009. I'm running to my rental car because I'm late for the next campaign visit. And he's like, one more thing, Sean. And he runs me down. He's like 80 years old. He sprints and he's like, read this real quick. It's abortion pill reversal. It's the future. And I think I looked at it and was like, you're crazy. Can't reverse an abortion. And I got in the car And now it's just, he was in San Diego where Dr. Delgado is a saint, modern saint who invented this. But what is abortion pill reversal?
So the abortion pill works, I mentioned, by depriving the baby of nutrients through the mechanism of thinning the woman's uterus. All of that is done because it blocks the hormone progesterone, which is necessary to sustain the pregnancy. And so abortion pill reversal is simply adding progesterone, more progesterone to kind of outcompete the mifepristone. You've got kind of like these two different chemicals looking for receptors. One of them's healthy, one of them's not. Well, let's just tilt the scales a little bit. More progesterone means more opportunities to nourish that baby and provide those nutrients that are essential to continuing the pregnancy. And so it's most effective. The sooner you take it after taking the abortion pill, the more likely it is that you'll be able to save your baby. 72 hours is sort of the soft deadline. It's not a hard deadline, but you really want to get it in before 72 hours after taking the mifepristone. Earlier than that, even better, more ideal. But this is something where you see a lot of naysaying from the abortion industry. They claim it doesn't work. They claim it's not safe. That silly progesterone is natural. A lot of women who just suffer from challenges during pregnancy take it to sustain their babies. I know we've had progesterone supplementation for 4 of our 5 children. No problems. It's not known to cause any problems. There's no evidence that children who are born after abortion pill reversal are any more likely to have any birth defects or anything like that. So it's just something that has been used about 2/3 of the time. Their numbers suggest it is successful at saving a baby. And there are thousands of children who are alive and well today as a result of it. So God bless Dr. Delgado for pioneering it and his team and all those who have done the research and provided the care. And they're doing truly the Lord's work. And Sean, you thought it was silly you couldn't reverse an abortion. When I first heard of it, I thought that's great, but who's going to want to, like 24 hours later, say, you know what, I wish I didn't have that abortion. You pay the money, you go through the experience. Of course, you want to end that pregnancy. Well, thousands of other women and growing quickly say otherwise. A lot of women are making use of this, thanks be to God.
Yeah. And I just remember hearing the term abortion reversal, and I'm like, later I read the pamphlet and all the science. I was like, this makes sense. But it is. Dr. Delgado is a genius, and it's not complicated. The doctors get trained on it. This is now national. I mean, you probably have somebody in your area that can do abortion pill reversal. It's not rocket science. It's very simple. It's just the timing of it. And it was awesome over the last 12 years, 13 years to see the success rate go up. It used to be like 1 out of, 8 or 9, babies. But now it's over across 50% a few years ago, and now it's 2/3 success rate. And Steve, I don't know if it's happened to you, but I've held babies that were saved from abortion pill reversal. And
that's awesome.
There's nothing like, hopefully all of you, I know it's happened to you, Steve. There's nothing like meeting a baby that was saved from abortion. It's just, I've met high schoolers, I've met, held infants. It's awesome. It's why we are here. It's why we do this. But there's something different about meeting the abortion pill reversal baby, because the process was taking place. I mean, the women that choose life at the fence, it's like, that was close. Thank God, I don't want to do this. Thank you for being out here. And they choose life. Some of them don't even go inside, or some of them run out, but they're not in the middle of the abortion. Abortion pill reversal is you were next, like you were on deck and you were at the plate and it was over and they're alive. It's just, I've met a couple of babies and children now who were saved from abortion pill reversal, and it's just awesome. And we're there for their mothers too, because it's very hard. Mothers struggle with whether to tell their child later on, which is understandable, that they tried to have them aborted and then switch their minds. So I've met women who say, I'm never going to tell them. I've met women who have already told them, but it's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. It's a very positive way to end this podcast. But go to 40daysforlife.com and find your location. This is all, we've mentioned this a lot. These are all of this is due to our pro-abortion federal government and many in the abortion industry not expecting Roe to be overturned. We expected it. We had a post-Roe plan. We've implemented that. We're about to get our first bus for our mobile 40 Days for Life to follow the RV abortion facility, the abortion RVs. We're getting our first bus. We had the post-Roe symposium last summer, the first one. We're opening that up even more in 2023. It's going to be in Orlando, Florida. Please sign up for that, for the post-Roe symposium. It used to just be for local leaders and their team members. It's not. We opened it up to everybody. You have to register. We provide most of the meals and your hotel, but you got to register online. So please do that. There's just a lot going on, but we're seeing these bizarre things because the government and the abortion industry didn't expect Roe to be overturned. And so women's health care, the dangers of RU46, all that's out the window. Post-Roe, let's go. They've got to go so extreme so fast, and they're doing that. So these are new problems, but they're good problems in the sense of they're in response to Roe being overturned. And a lot of the abortion facilities that are going to close, we're going to see, and the birth rate going up just since Roe was overturned. We'll take that atmosphere. It's a good atmosphere to be in because it's one of victory. So let's not forget that as we meet these new insane challenges. So with that, thank you, Steve. Happy St. Valentine's Day to everyone. Steve, I hope you and Laura have a wonderful Valentine's Day. I hope you go to Buffalo Wild Wings and have your cheese curds. Poor Peter. And to all of you, if you're watching this on Valentine's Day morning or something, we're not going out. We're staying home and cooking gumbo with all of our kids. But do something. Do something. Come on. We need to restore marriage. We need to restore romance. I know, and to the heart of the matter, the book I wrote a couple of years ago, there was a study that said like most college students had never been on a date before. It's like, we're not dating, we're just texting each other on social media. So go on a date, do something fun this week. Use Valentine's Day as an excuse to do it so that the computers don't take over as they did in Terminator 2. Okay, it's not going to work out good. So thank you, Steve. Please rate, review, share this podcast. Leave your comments below if you're watching us on YouTube, and we will see you next time. God bless you.